everyone. Welcome into the latest episode of Catholic Guy. In this episode, I sit down with Father Anthony Muñoz, Pastor of Bugala and of Opus Dei, to talk about the state of Catholicism in Uganda, especially among the youth. We talk about several topics, several issues that are bothering or affecting young Catholics, from formation, lack of catechesis, to marriage, to relationships, to dating, and everything in between. Please watch. Support me by watching, liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, but especially by sharing with your fellow Catholics at home and abroad. Thank you very much, and please enjoy the episode. Welcome. I'm very excited to finally sit down and have this conversation with you. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I'm glad that you agreed to it when I brought it to you. I didn't know how that conversation would go, but I'm very glad that you are willing to sit down with me and have this conversation, because I think that it's going to be very important for many Catholics to get to know about you and the work that you've done. Because I'm speaking from the point of view of the lay people. and some of the things that we're going to talk about are extremely important, and even long after both of us are gone further, this video is still going to be on YouTube. So my children are going to watch it, and the people watching their children are going to watch it. So I'm really, really glad that we are finally making it happen. Yes. So we can dive right in. You can tell us just a little bit in summary, who you are, where you come from. Yeah.
Good. My name is Father Anthony. I come from Spain. I was born in Gerona, in a town not very far from Barcelona. Yes. And I have been in Africa for many years, since 1988.
1988, that's the year I was born.
Okay. I have been in Kenya mostly,
Yes.
and since 2009 I
Yes.
have been in Uganda.
Since 2009, so you've been here for sorry about that, that's 15 years.
Yes.
Okay. Your Father Anthony, Pastor?
Yes, my surname is Pastor, which means shepherd.
Who is Father Anthony Muñoz?
My second surname is Muñoz.
Okay.
So I am Father Anthony Pastor-Muñoz. There in Spain, people in the IT or in any document use the Christian name plus two surnames. One
Yes.
from the father, the other one from the mother.
Okay, that's good to know. Why did you pick the priesthood as a vocation? How did that come to be?
Just let me tell you briefly.
Yes.
I am a member of Opus Dei.
Yes.
As you know. Now, in Opus Dei, some of the members choose to lead a celibate life. That was my case. And among those, some of them are called to the priesthood, but not because they are better than the others. Saint Jose Maria, our founder, used to say that in Opus Dei, the priesthood is not the crowning of one's vocation. So I don't like much to hear how did you discover your vocation to priesthood, because priesthood came as an accident, so to speak. You understand?
Yes. Yes.
So I was approached after I finished my studies and started working. I was approached by the prelate at the time, Blessed Alvaro, the successor, the first successor of Saint Josemaria, not directly, because
Yes.
he was in Rome, I was in Spain. And I said, fine, let me go to the seminary of the prelature, and after some years I was ordained.
Yes. This issue of vocation to someone like me could come with a bit of wisdom, because there have been times in my life where I thought that perhaps the priesthood is where I should be investigating my vocation. How would you say, what is the process for discernment? How does one know that, you know what, I think I'm being called to the vocation of marriage rather than being called to the vocation of the priesthood? I would say, for example, in my case, Father, you and I have had conversations over the years, and you've always told me, John, I have a very strong belief that you're called to the vocation of marriage. Eventually, I think I always knew that. I always knew that I was being called to the vocation of marriage, but I was so confused about God's will for my life that I was also giving time to think about whether or not I wanted to live a life of celibacy. So what would you say to someone who is watching this, who is discerning and is completely, and he or she is confused and they don't know whether they are being called to a religious life or they are being called to marriage? What are some of the signs that tell you that, you know what, I think that I am being called to this particular vocation and not to the other one?
First of all, let me tell you that you can be called to lead a celibate life without being a religious. That was
Yes.
my case. When I joined Opus Dei, I had it very clear in my mind that
Yes.
I was not going to be a religious,
Yes.
even though I had embraced celibacy.
Yeah. Is that what we call the numeraries?
Numeraries and
Yes.
associate,
Okay.
they are called those who
Yes.
embrace celibacy. Now, you're asking me how to somehow direct someone
Yes.
who is doubting. You see, you cannot put yourself in the shoes of someone else. It has to be his or her decision. What you can do is to encourage this person to grow spiritually, to acquire or improve in Christian virtues, and to pray, and the time comes when one makes the decision.
Yes.
And I believe that if this person has been sincere with himself, with herself, he or she will make the right decision.
Yes. Are you saying that it is possible to make the wrong decision in discernment of vocation?
Yes, it is possible, of course, as it is possible to make a mistake in any decision.
So in the case of a person who decides to pick the religious life, but maybe over time, maybe their struggles with chastity might indicate that perhaps they were better off getting married. But what about a person? Is it possible for a person to choose the vocation of marriage, yet they were being called to the priesthood?
Everything is possible.
The reason I'm saying this is that I have a colleague that I know, a friend of mine, who tells me that he's very convinced that he was being called to the religious life, but he actively refused to follow that calling because he felt like he wanted to be in the world. But when I think about that, I feel like it may not be accurate, because I think that in my particular case, if I were to advise someone who was discerning between the religious life and marriage, I would tell them, what do you want more? Do you feel like you want to have children more, or that you want to be celibate more? Because in my case, that's what I followed. In my case, I asked myself, what do I desire more? Do I desire a life of being a father, a husband, and working in the world? Or do I desire more to live a life of celibacy, and maybe because I really admired the priesthood. So for me, it was, I wouldn't have probably become like a brother or something. I admired the act of consecration. Whenever I see the priest consecrating the bread and the wine, I was always struck with admiration. So my desires to become a priest were centered around having the privilege of carrying out the consecration.
So let me interrupt you.
Yes.
I say from time to time that in Mass, imagine a priest saying the Mass, not necessarily the priest is the one getting more fruits, more benefit of that Mass.
Yes.
Perhaps this lady, an old lady who is in a corner who can hardly hear, is the one who is benefiting most
Yes.
of the Mass, more than the priest. And imagine if a priest says Mass in state of sin,
Yes.
instead of benefiting of that Mass, he is committing a sacrilege. He is adding a sin to the sins that already
Yes.
are in his soul. So I think that we should have to remove from people's mind, this idea that a priest, because he can perform certain actions which are unique, consecrating during the Mass, forgiving sins, necessarily is a holy man, or in a way is above the others.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Remember the story of the widow who put that
The 2 pennies.
2 pennies in the treasury of the
Yes.
temple. God knows how to read the heart, and the last will be the first. It's
Yes.
sentence that is
Yeah.
repeated a number of times.
So,
So Jesus.
yeah. Father, I think what you've said is very important when it comes to, because you have to choose a vocation for the right reasons. So you shouldn't join the priesthood because of the prestige that you're going to get from it. You should join the priesthood. I think the bottom line is you should pick any vocation for the glory of God. Whether it is marriage or religious life, it should be picked and chosen in order to glorify God.
Yes.
And other reasons why they may be practical, they may make sense, are lesser reasons than the ultimate reason, which is the glorification of God.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that piece of advice, Father. So tell us also, what is Opus Dei? What is this? What is, we've heard so much about it. What is it?
There is so much published about Opus Dei.
Yes.
Let's see. Opus Dei is an institution of the Church. Currently, it has the juridical, let's say, form or status, rather, of a personal prelature. So it is made up by lay people, mostly. Most of them are married. Some are celibate, as we saw before. A few priests, compared with the number of lay people, and a prelate as its head.
Yes.
Currently, the prelate is Monsignor Ferdinand in English,
Fernando.
Cariz in Spanish, Fernando.
Okay.
So this is Opus Dei. And what is the purpose of this institution? To help people acquire the Christian ideal to the full, that is holiness in the world, not living the world in the circumstances where they find themselves.
Okay.
And then if you ask me, what does a member of Opus Dei do? He works well and seriously, and with the spirit of service. And he prays. He has a plan of life, a series of devotions and prayers that he fulfills every day, of course, including Mass. And he cares for the others. spiritually, also materially.
Yes.
So this is Opus Dei.
Okay. How can someone watching this get in touch with Opus Dei?
How can
Yeah.
someone get in touch?
Yeah, someone who may be watching this and may be interested in finding out more. Where can they find that information?
He can come to our centers. In Uganda, we have a center for men, a center for women, and then I would say another center, or rather a school run by women of Opus Dei next to the retreat house. These are the places where one could go if he wants to see what Opus Dei is.
Yes, I'm assuming there's a website. Is there a website or something you can share?
So.
In
yes,
the
of course,
link?
there is a website.
Okay.
Yes, but let me tell you one thing. Opus Dei is not the centers. Opus Dei is the place where each member is, so to speak.
It is a spirit. Yes.
It's a family in which the husband, the wife, or perhaps both are members of Opus Dei. That is also a place where you encounter Opus Dei.
Yes. Okay. I think we'll look for our website and, if possible, maybe an email address, and we shall add them to the description of this video so that people who are watching can know where to log in and to send a message in case they want to reach out. Okay. So, Father, one of the reasons that I requested you to come and sit down with me is because personally I think it's been about 8 years since I decided to start living the life of a devout Catholic. And when I say living the life of a devout Catholic, is to try to the best of my ability, despite failing several times, but to try to the best of my ability to avoid mortal sin, to go for confession regularly, to receive the Eucharist as often as I can, and to never miss Sunday Mass, the Sunday obligation. So it's been about 8 years. I've been blessed in that time to encounter several other people who are also on the same path. But during that time, I have also noticed that people of that inclination are a very small minority in Uganda. We are going to focus on Uganda. I know that this is the same phenomenon happening outside of Uganda and in the whole world. The Catholic Church is having the same struggles everywhere, but I want us to limit our scope to Uganda. During the time that I have been trying to, let's call it walking the straight and narrow, I've met several Catholics who I would say probably don't take the faith seriously as they should. And many times they are even surprised by how seriously I take it. So you will find, for example, I have encountered Catholics who identify as Catholics who support things like abortion. Like abortion. Yes. Who support things like abortion. Who have, I remember distinctly one time I was at a certain place and I got a cup of water like this. I was going to drink it and I made the sign of the cross. And the people were shocked. And everyone in that room was a Catholic. And they were stunned because they thought that was taking religion to an extreme degree. Yet this is something that 40 years ago, making the sign of the cross before taking a soda was just normal for Catholics to do. I want to ask you, why do you think that in Uganda in particular, the Catholic Church has fallen away so much? Okay, Catholics have fallen away so much that a person like me is a shrinking minority. And the average Catholic is a person who is likely to not take the faith seriously? Why is it the case that devout Catholics are a very, very tiny minority in the country?
It's a difficult question, but I believe that it has always been the case. You read a little bit of history of the Church, you realize that Catholics who take their faith seriously are not many. It is true that you have some stages in history in some areas.
Yeah.
A society which is Catholic somehow, the morals of that society, even externally, agree with the Catholic faith. But still, in this society, you have the Catholic who fulfills the precepts of the Church, not from the heart. So I tend to think that this case, the one you are exposing, has always been the case in the world.
Do you think it's worse now than it was 20, 30 years ago?
I don't know. I can think that in my case, I have seen a deterioration of many moral aspects. Yes, I always say that when I was a young boy, there was no pornography. I remember having heard that in Spain, those who wanted to watch a bad movie, which I suppose that was not so bad, would go all the way to France, to Perpignan. They could cross the border. They would spend 1 or 2 days, I suppose. It depends on which town you were.
They had to be very dedicated.
Yes, because there was no pornography on television. Perhaps there were some magazines, but few. And of course, if someone was caught somehow looking at this stuff, the reaction was that of correcting him or scolding him or beating him up.
Yes.
But nowadays, pornography is available everywhere. This is just a sample of this deterioration I am telling you about.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a decline.
Okay. Let's dive in. Have you found that one of the issues most affecting young Catholics, especially in the modern age, is let's call it the sin of impurity?
Yes, it has always been the case, I believe, because we have a strong tendency of enjoying these satisfactions that the relation gives us.
Yeah. Okay, it has always been the case, but surely we could say that, like you said, it's worse now because of the deterioration and the availability now, the accessibility of pornography.
The temptations, we can say, the temptations are many more now than before.
And it's much easier to access them than it was before. Yes. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling with the sin of impurity? Let's narrow down the sins of impurity because they are not the same. Let's talk about the sin of pornography and masturbation. Someone who has struggled with this sin for a long time and is watching this, what advice do you have for that person who feels maybe oftentimes, and someone who has struggled with this particular sin also, oftentimes there is always that feeling of, why am I bothering so much? Why am I bothering myself to fight so hard? against this. What advice do you have for a person who maybe is tempted to despair, or maybe even is tempted to not care so much about it? Because there is two aspects of it. There is the aspect of the person who doesn't think it's a big deal. What do you say to a person who doesn't think it's a big deal? And two, a person who thinks it's a big deal but is finding it difficult to shake.
In the case of a person who thinks that it is not a big deal, I would try and put into his mind that it is a big deal, because masturbation is a mortal sin. I think that in the case of Onan in Genesis,
Yes.
can be, in a way, an example of masturbation, because masturbation consists in using the faculty of procreation outside the marriage, even outside the natural, let's say, aim, which is the, let's say, sexual union.
So what is the proper way to use the sexual faculty?
Of course, it's marriage, but let's go step by step.
Yes.
So a person like that has to understand that the sin is serious. And I understand that someone may take it lightly simply because he never had the chance to know. He didn't have the help, the direction. In the case of someone who knows it is serious, but thinks that overcoming it is
Father,
not
before we
possible.
go to the second person, maybe I can also add something to this. Again, we'll cover, when we're discussing the issue of impurity, we'll have to emphasize the purpose for which God created the sexual faculty that human beings possess. So the Catholic Church teaches that the sex in its proper place is something that is supposed to be had in a unitive and procreative way. Yes. Unitive meaning it has to be between one man and one woman in the context of marriage. So that means if it is outside the context of marriage, for example, fornication and adultery, it is fornication, adultery, or masturbation. Because in fornication, it is outside marriage. In adultery, it is outside marriage. Masturbation, it is outside marriage, but it is also not between one man and one woman. And then secondly, it has to be procreative, in that it should its potency to bring forth life, to bring forth a child, should not be inhibited. Should not be inhibited. So that means masturbation falls under that aspect, because there is no woman there or man, in case it's a woman who is masturbating, there is no man or woman there with whom a child can be had. So the sexual pleasure is being experienced without the possibility of conception occurring, which is gravely sinful, because it is a twisting of the sexual faculty from its objective goal, which is unitive and procreative, to serve a selfish, self-directed desire for pleasure, for the experience of pleasure. Yes. The same also applies to homosexuality, which is sex between two men or two women, because it is not, there is no procreation. First, there is no procreation possible, and two, it is outside the context of marriage, because marriage can only be had between one man and one woman. So for people who are wondering why masturbation is wrong, it goes against the reasons for which God created sex. God created sex to unite a man and a woman in marriage and to bring forth children. Yes. So anything that is done to prevent the unitive aspect, which is marital in nature, which is that I'm married and we are having sex. If I'm not married, or if I'm married but I'm having sex with somebody else, or if I'm having sex with someone of my own kind, of my own gender, or if I'm having sex with myself, which is basically what masturbation is. All those are, what's the word? I don't want to use the word twisted. I want to use a proper word. They are what's the word? They are perverted. Yes, they are perversions. Yeah, they are perversions of the sexual act. This is also where we will talk about this later on, but this is also why contraception is wrong. Contraception is wrong because now it kills off the ability of the sexual act to bring forth life. So again, it is serving a selfish need, which selfish need is the pleasure of the person enjoying the sexual act. So anytime the sexual faculty is misused, mortal sin is committed. Yes. So, and also this also obviously goes to to things that may not necessarily involve the act of having sexual pleasure, but which may be directed towards it. For example, entertaining impure thoughts about another person. So if when you entertain impure thoughts about a person, you are also perverting the sexual act or the sexual faculty in that you are focusing on your own desire to use this person for your own pleasure. Yes, you want, lust is basically the desire to use somebody else's body to give yourself pleasure. So it is the opposite of love. While love is sacrificial and self-giving, lust is greedy and self-serving. Yes. So the advice that you would give to a person who knows all this, maybe the person knows, you know what, I'm not supposed to be admiring women who I am not married to in a lustful manner. I'm not supposed to be watching pornography. I'm not supposed to be masturbating. But I am struggling. What do I do?
First of all, I would tell this person not to give up, because one can develop a bad habit, a vice, and this habit can be very strong, and you don't get rid of it in a short time. So I would tell this person, just be patient, keep on praying, go to the sacraments, go for confession, receive the Eucharist, always with a clean heart. And be patient. The time comes when you get over it. I have seen, I would say, a good number of cases.
Yes, I think that's very encouraging to know that you have seen a good number of people who have actually, eventually, come out the other side. You know, they've passed through the darkness and they've come out the other side. So it's important. I think the most important thing is never to give up.
Yes.
That is the most important thing, is to keep fighting. And the more you fight, the more you find yourself becoming better and better. It's like any addiction. It's like even an addiction to alcohol. Any addiction, if you want to get over something, it's important to keep getting up when you fall.
Yes.
Because you don't know how soon the breakthrough is coming. You may just be on the threshold of a breakthrough. So if you quit now, you will never know when. So you have to keep going. So thank you. So, Father, you have been a priest for very many years. I mean, in Uganda alone, you've told me that you've been here for 15 years. So you joined Opus Dei in 1988. That's what. Did you say you joined Opus Dei?
I came to Africa.
You came. Oh my goodness! You came to Africa in 1988. Yes. Father, you've been in Africa for 36 years.
Yes.
That is a very long time. What, in your experience as a priest in the confessional, what are the things? What is bothering young men and young women the most? What do you think, if you were to advise in a generic way? Because I know that your role is to advise on a case-by-case basis. So each person has their own struggles, their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own personality. So you go on a case-by-case basis and you give advice according to what you think is the most prudent for them to do. But if you were to give like a general bird's eye view of the situation among young Catholics, what would you say where is the biggest wound? Where is the biggest wound? Is it impurity? Is it lack of catechesis? Is it lack of good shepherds? Is it poor upbringing? Is it bad company?
All that is true. I mean, you are pointing out a number of factors that make it difficult for people to grow in a healthy way spiritually. You have mentioned chastity. Of course, you don't have to be a priest to know that a number of, let's say, couples, not married, people who are in a relationship, even who are already engaged, are not behaving the right way regarding chastity. And I tend to think that this is the root cause for many marital problems. The problems come afterwards, after they get married. They don't realize that by leading a life of impurity, they are spoiling each other. The husband is using the wife and in a way.
And the wife is using the husband too. It's a two-way thing.
The wife is, the husband is, the wife is using the husband as well.
Yes.
But what I mean is that these virtues that are necessary in order to lead a good Christian life are somehow destroyed. And you can hardly ask a married man to be faithful to his wife when during the, let's say, 5 years of engagement or that relationship, they have been committing the sin of fornication, to be clear. The wife grows older and she loses that natural beauty, as happens to all of us as time goes by, and there are many other women around. And, he has not acquired that self-control, and he ends up being unfaithful to his wife. I think that this is almost mathematics.
Yes. Yeah.
This is one of the problems.
I always tell people. I advise ladies especially because ladies tend to have the same problem over and over again, and that's the problem of I can't keep a boyfriend. You find a woman in the space of 5 years has been in 4 relationships, and it's the same thing. The same thing. He cheated on me. He cheated on me. He cheated on me. He cheated on me. But when you give them, because me, I always tell them, look, there is one. It is not 100% certain, but it is the best advice I can give you. It's better than any other advice that I can think of. A man who is willing to wait for marriage to have sex with you is a man who is not interested in just your body. He's interested in other things about you. Yes. There are other things about you that are so interesting to him that he's willing to put his lust aside to keep you in his life. If a man would rather lose you than not have sex, if he would rather end the relationship than not have sex, it means your body is the most important thing that you're bringing to the table. He does not find other qualities about you very interesting. He doesn't think you're that funny. He doesn't think you have the best conversations, But so he just takes the body is what is keeping his attention there. And so I always tell them, tell a man on the first date, if you go out on a date, let's say it's the third date, tell him, look, I am abstinent and I don't intend to have sex until I get married. how do you feel about that? See how the man reacts. If he slowly stops communicating and then he disappears, then you know that you are not that interesting enough to him without sex on the table. If he stays, make sure you marry that man.
Yeah.
Make sure you marry that man, because that man finds you so interesting to be around, and you're such an influence on his life that he's willing to sacrifice that part of him just to keep you, to have you as a spouse. Further, the unfortunate thing is very few women take this advice. And the reason that very few women take this advice is because the ladies are also struggling with impurity. So the ladies themselves are looking, this is my own experience as a lay person, but the ladies do want good men, but they themselves find it difficult to remain chaste.
But perhaps in the case of the ladies, they want to keep that man. Because, see, nowadays, it's not easy to find a husband. And when they see that this man is showing interest in me and he starts with these demands that are not clean, they say, fine, if I give in, at least
Yes.
I keep him close.
That's
to
true.
me. Perhaps.
No, Father, that's true. But then again, that's exactly why that relationship ends up not working. Because the time is going to come when he's not going to be interested in that aspect of you for reasons you've stated. For example, you're not as beautiful as you used to be. You've borne him 5 children. What if you fall sick? What if you fall sick with a long-term disease? What if something, there are so many things that could happen that are going to cause you and your spouse to have to go through forced abstinence. What's going to happen during that phase? What if it's a space of a year? Is he going to stay with you, or is he going to leave? If you lead with your body, he's going to judge you according to that. He's going to judge you according to how a man will respect a woman according to how she respects herself. If you don't respect yourself enough to say that I deserve a man who will wait for me, the man is also going to treat you the way you treat yourself. And yes, and if you're bringing sex if that's what you're using to keep the man, what are you going to do when you can't use it anymore? He's going to go and look for. So I realize this is also further ties into the issue of modesty. So I always tell girls that, when you dress a certain way, the man who is coming to talk to you, don't think he's coming because he's thinking of having babies with you and building a family. When you're wearing a mini skirt and it is body hugging and all your parts are out, and this handsome guy smelling nice comes and flirts with you and you're feeling excited, or do you think that man has come because he wants to marry you and keep you as his only wife and have children with you, and grow all together? Or he has come because he's curious to find out what more is under your dress? That's what he has come for. He has come because he is intrigued by what you're displaying and he wants to discover more. So do you think that man is going to stay with you after he has discovered what he came to discover? He's not going to stay, because guess what? There is another girl out there who is just as, if not more beautiful than you. There is another girl out there who takes all the beauty that you have and multiplies it by 2. When the man sees that girl, you're not going to mean anything to him anymore, because there is something better out there to get. So I always tell women, dress modestly so that cover up properly. Do not expose yourself indecently, so that the man who comes to approach you has not been drawn by lust. He's been drawn by something else that is intriguing about you. He wants to know, this girl talks well about Christ. Other aspects that are not sexual in nature, such that you build a relationship on something more meaningful than lust and carnal pleasure. Yes. Do you think that what do you have to say about the issue of modesty? Do you think it's really, really, how bad do you think it is?
It's a bit bad. I must tell you. And
Yes.
I would say that the way a girl dresses gives you a kind of picture of what she has in her mind. What are the values, or perhaps the lack of values in her mind.
Yes. In what way exactly?
Yes, because modesty, in a way, means that you understand the meaning of chastity as a virtue, which is helpful to you. If you are not modest, you are saying, not with words but with your body dressed in that particular way, that chastity is not important, is not helpful.
What about ladies who don't think about chastity? Maybe they just feel like, when I dress this way, I feel, let me just use the word, I feel sexy. When I dress this way, I feel sexy and I look good. When I take pictures and selfies and things of that nature, I attract attention. Many people will not admit, I'm sure that many girls would not admit that a lot of the time, how they dress is also related to maybe a desire for attention. Sometimes, especially from men, because if you go to a nightclub, the girls are dressed in a particular way because there is a reason why they are dressing that way. It's not just because they are feeling good about themselves, but it could also be because they are hoping to attract the right kind of. They want to attract a nice guy, a guy with money. They are basically. It's almost like throwing a fishing rod into the sea and hoping to catch something good. So, but girls will say further. Girls will say that they don't think about causing a man to sin when they dress in a certain way. They don't think about chastity. It's just that they feel nice about themselves. It improves their confidence when they see people giving them compliments, saying how beautiful they are, how sexy they are. And that is true. Especially ladies, they like being complimented. So a lot of the things they do, it is for self-esteem. So makeup, nice hair, nice dress, it makes her feel confident. She goes out knowing she's looking like $1 million, and it boosts her self-esteem when she sees the positive feedback that she gets from people. So what would you say about girls who just say, no, it just improves my self-esteem and my confidence? When I
quite a bit from you. It's true. No, it is true. It is true. I agree with you that some girls may not intend to become a temptation for men. I don't doubt it. Also, the fashion has a lot of influence on the way women dress.
Yes.
You want to dress like the others. Remember, I heard this girl goes to a party with a dress, and then she sees that in the party all the other girls are wearing trousers. So she goes back home, puts on
That's so sad.
trousers, and then goes back to the party. So there are a number of factors that can make a lady dress immodest.
Yes.
Not only this not grasping the meaning of chastity.
Yes.
But I think that in all the cases, at the back of the mind, there is some kind of
discomfort.
No, somehow disrupted the concept or idea of what chastity is. One gets used to behaving in a particular way, that is true. And
Yes.
what at the beginning was something a bit, let's say, indecent, after some time it becomes normal.
Yes.
But still, in this girl, there is a problem with the understanding of chastity, I believe.
Yes. Because you've said people just simply don't know. We talked about the issue of a person who doesn't know or doesn't believe that masturbation is a big deal. Now we're talking about the issue of a girl who doesn't think that wearing a thigh-high slit is immodest or is a bad thing. And that ignorance, that lack of knowledge, that is down to not having been taught the faith. So, Father, why are Catholics poorly catechized?
One of the reasons is the family, the kind of family in which they grow. Because the first catechist is not the catechist at the parish, it is the father and the mother. Remember in the second letter of St. Paul to Timothy, how at the beginning he says, I see in you the faith that
Of your mother.
your mother, the
Yes.
mother was Lois, or no, Eunice, and your grandmother,
Yes.
Lois, anyway. So you learn what to be a Christian, a Catholic, at home, first of all. Not only by learning a few prayers, or practicing some devotions like the Rosary, but just looking at the way your parents behave.
Yes.
I mean, the family is a school of virtues, and if the family is not a proper one, perhaps because the father is not there, the case of a single mother, which is frequent nowadays, at least in our country, or because the father, though he is, let's say, present, but his role as a father is minimal. I could say he pays the school fees and that's it. But he has never spent time with their children, listened to them, going out with them. Of course, that makes it difficult for the children to learn what to be a Catholic is. This is one of the factors. Then another factor is influence that comes from different sources. Just think of social media or peer pressure. Very often somehow takes up the time that should be dedicated to learning, to learn your faith. We dedicate very little time to studying, reading about our faith, or conversing as we are doing now. We spend a lot of time, in social media, or watching movies, but we dedicate very little time to our spiritual formation. Actually, what we do in Opus Dei is basically catechizing people. Saint Jose Maria would say that Opus Dei is a great catechesis.
Yes. And also, you talked about, for example, television. Many immoral behaviors, a lot of immoral behavior is learned from television. So growing up, I remember it was very difficult, very rare to watch a music video that didn't have some kind of immodesty or impurity involved. So you grow up, we have children who are growing up thinking that dressing, being half naked is normal because everyone they see on TV is half naked, you know. So yeah, it becomes so even if your parents are well dressed, and I'm sure I know most of our parents are well dressed. That generation was well dressed, but if I'm growing up seeing, I won't mention names, but all these musicians, and how they dress and how they talk, and how they talk about issues like sex, for example, then that's the attitude that I'm going to develop in my mind, you know.
Yes.
So going into high school, when you start forming peer groups, there are always rotten apples, you know, who have already been infected with that way of thinking about the opposite gender, for example. And so you start befriending men, young boys of 14, 15, 16, who already have a perverted view of sexuality and the body.
Yes.
And they're already going to be talking about girls in derogative and perverted ways. And your parents at that point can't really save you that much. You know, there's only so much that parents can do to protect their children. There have to be other, if my parents have made sure that I'm getting a good education, they have made sure that I've learned my prayers, passed my catechism, received First Holy Communion, received confirmation. They are well behaved, they never use bad language, they are always well dressed, make sure I go for Sunday. This was the case in my household, you know. They always make sure that I go for Sunday Mass, you know. What other, now who else has to come in to help me safeguard my innocence and my chastity? Because once I've left home and my parents have done what they can do, and I'm in the world now, I'm in high school, who has to step in and help my parents to safeguard what they have already started?
I remember this young fellow that was in Kenya. He had 3 daughters, but he was still young. And he told me once that when his daughters go out to see other friends and then they come back, he gets so horrified, so shocked from what they tell him that he feels like putting them in a cage and not letting them go out of home. That is not possible. But you see, in this case, the daughters are telling their father what they have discussed or have seen in those other homes that they have visited. So if you are able to create a relationship with your children of friendships, that can be the solution, because you don't keep your children isolated from the world, but you put into their mind and the right ideas, right principles. I think that this can be the solution. Just to mention it, what Saint Josemaria would say to parents is that they have to become the friends of their children, and that means spending time with them, and this is difficult. I believe it's difficult. And then also parents can choose, to a certain extent, the environment in which their children, live. see, I know of some parents who fear boarding schools because they don't know,
What happens there?
yes, and the kind of people their children are going to meet.
Yes.
We know that here, traditionally, children even in primary go to boarding school because they are somehow good and better than day schools. But
Yes.
I have a little bit of experience of having talked to children who have been badly influenced in a boarding school.
Yeah. Having gone through a boarding school myself, I can safely tell you that it's a war zone, spiritually speaking. It's a war zone, and there are very many casualties on the battlefield. That's why, Father, I want to talk about. But before I go there, I wanted to emphasize something when you talked about friendship with children. When a parent is friends with their child, it also helps the parent to find out what is happening in the child's life that they would otherwise not find out. So if the child recently got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, if the child trusts you and they see you as a friend, they are likely to open up and tell you, I have a boyfriend or I have a girlfriend. And then if the parent knows how to navigate such situations, they will guide the child on what to do. Yes, things like, could you bring him over and we take a look at him, and is he from a good family? What kind of things of that manner.
Yes.
Also, things to do, for example, and this is something I've seen firsthand, things to do with leaving the faith altogether. Because many Catholics abandon the Catholic faith, I think, before the age, I would say on average before the age of 25. Many people who I've been watching a lot, I've watched a lot of conversion stories. And one thing I've realized is that people who become Catholic tend to become Catholic when they are older. And they tend to become Catholic when they're older because they are asking the right questions and looking for the answers in the right places. So, but people tend to leave the Catholic faith when they are very young. And they tend to leave the Catholic faith when they're very young because they don't have someone in their life, who either knows the Catholic faith enough to dispel these other notions that are being introduced into the child's mind, or at the very least is living the kind of life that will inspire a child to want to remain in the faith. I know people who stayed Catholic, not necessarily because their parents were good theologians or good apologists, but because they were good Catholics. They were moral people, and this inspired in the child a certain routines, for example, that help them increase in holiness, and be morally upright, and to take the Catholic faith seriously because of how it had affected their lives. So when these other false notions come in, when these all, preachers come at them trying to snatch them from the faith, they may not have good answers to give as to why they believe. For example, a girl may not know a good answer to give about why she talks to Mary, to the Blessed Virgin, or why she prays the Rosary. But she knows that this has worked well for me in my life, and there is no reason to reinvent the wheel. There is no reason for me to stop doing what I've always done, since it has always had consistently good results. So being friends with your children will also help them to stay in the faith.
Yes.
Yes, at a very critical age where many Catholics actually live, because they don't see anything in their families to ground them in the faith. You find daddy and mommy are also not well catechized. They forgot their catechism, they're not, or they are not living good moral lives. A person could be a good theologian, but if I'm coming home drunk every night, and my children are already seeing me drunk, it may not it may not be possible for them to make a good case to remain Catholic if it has not had a good impact on my life. Yes. So, and that's a good segue to bring in, okay, maybe we can also talk about broken families. You know, you talked about single motherhood. I would say that maybe that's also one of the reasons why these people come out broken of their people come out of the home and they are broken, because there was already brokenness in the relationship between mommy and daddy. You know, daddy wasn't around, you know, so raised by a single mother, you know, yeah, maybe is it possible for you to say something about single motherhood? Why is it so common nowadays? Back in the day, back in the day, it was a tragedy for a woman to to conceive out of wedlock, let alone raise a child by herself. These days it is all over the place. And I have several friends who are single mothers, and I can tell you, Father, it's not a life that I would want for my daughter or for my sister. But it is rife. Why? Why has single motherhood hit such high levels?
I don't know, but I think that the family plays an important, a crucial role in forming the girls.
So it goes back again to catechesis, to how you're raised.
Not only catechesis in the sense of theoretical knowledge, but
having a good example.
I have heard, I am not a psychologist, but I have heard that fathers specifically, play a very important role in bringing up their daughters as women who know how to say no, so to speak, who understand what marriage is and what is the right path that leads to marriage, for example. But very often men are not very concerned or involved in the bringing up of their daughters.
Yes.
I think that this could be one of the causes.
Yeah. Yes.
Perhaps also, I don't know, what they see on television, the messages, the videos and in social media, this can also have an impact in this over sexualized society.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Father, 100%. Yeah.
But I would take you back to the family as the
yes. One thing I would say is that cycles tend to repeat themselves in families over generations. So you will have generations of alcoholism, for example, in a family.
Yes.
Yeah. You will have generations of domestic violence. And these are all, like you said, it is catechizing, using an example, showing if I grow up seeing my father beating my mother, I have a higher than average chance of beating my wife, because I grew up thinking that it is normal for couples to have that dynamic. If I grow up with my father being very promiscuous, I am very likely to cheat on my wife, because it was normalized in my head.
That is true.
That is
so.
Yes.
I have seen cases.
So I think this issue of single motherhood, sometimes it also comes from people raised by single mothers. So you find a girl who grew up with a single mom thinks that it's not the worst thing in the world to be a single mom. After all, my mother raised me by herself. Why shouldn't I raise a child by myself? You know. So I think fatherhood is one of the most important things that helps in the formation of children.
Not just fatherhood, but I don't know how to put it, but wanting to be a husband, because many young men don't want to be husbands.
Yes.
I am afraid.
They want to enjoy the marital benefits without the sacrifice.
Yes, we are in a crisis of husbands, perhaps also of wives, but of husbands. I have come across many cases of women, mostly women, that don't manage to make the men they know, even their boyfriends, commit themselves. I mean, they are reluctant. I don't know whether they are fearful of, but I think that Pope, I'm sure yes, Pope Francis has mentioned this a number of times, that this fear to commitment, and it's true. I have seen it, and it affects, I think, women more than men. You have many women who would like to start a family, start off a family. They are 30, 31, 32, and they don't have anyone who is ready to join them in this enterprise.
There is a crisis of, can we call it a crisis of masculinity?
Yes,
crisis
perhaps.
of masculinity, because, like I've said, I'm now 8 years into my walk with Christ, but I wasn't always on my walk with Christ. For several years before that, I was on my walk with the devil. And we've talked about this already, Father. Many of the things we're talking about are recurrent, and we keep going back to them because those are the fundamental issues. And when you're talking about a sickness of the body, you're going to keep rehashing certain things like diet and exercise, because those are the fundamental reasons why this body is falling sick. And in this particular case, we have to talk about the misuse, once again, the misuse of the body. The misuse of the body, both by men and women. So, in the case, back in the day, Father, you can correct me if I am wrong, because you have lived way longer than I have. But I feel like back in that day, having premarital or extramarital sex, especially premarital sex, was stigmatized.
Yes.
So let's look at maybe the 1950s Uganda. Catholicism came to this country in the 19th century, the 1800s. Okay, let's say it started peaking. It started going up, peaking maybe 30s, 40s, 50s, when these big schools were built and the big cathedrals. So we could say that was the spring of Christianity, of Catholicism.
Yes.
So you are very likely at the time to find people who are behaving like Catholics. So in those days, if a man wanted to have marital relations, if a man wanted to have sex with a woman, he had to marry her first. You had to go through all the procedures, including the traditional marriage. So you have to go for what the kuchala, then you have to do the introduction ceremony, the kuhinjira or the kwanjula, then you have to do a church wedding. It is only after the church wedding that you are allowed to exchange your bodies with each other. So there was a motivation, this is my theory, there was a motivation for men to get married, to have an opportunity to experience that kind of life with a woman, to have that experience with a woman. So because sex was at a premium, you could say it was very expensive to get sex. Men had no choice but to pay that price, which was abstinence, even though you could say it was involuntary. Maybe many men didn't like having to wait for marriage, but they still had to do it because that's the society they were in. So they had to wait for marriage, and then finally they could get to have sex with their wives. Right now, it is so easy to get sex as a man. that men do not see the purpose of getting married. Remember that many men do not see marriage as a spiritual institution. They see it as something. It's very hard for a man to justify monogamy if there is no spiritual aspect to it.
Yes.
If a man is not thinking about heaven and hell, it's very hard for him to justify why he's not having sex with several women. Why not do it? I mean, if the reason why I particularly practice abstinence is because I want to go to heaven. I want to avoid hell. I want to have a very close intimacy with Christ. And I can't do that if I'm living a certain kind of life. I have to put some things aside in order to give myself the best possible chance of experiencing the kind of happiness that I'm looking for. So, if you're now living in a society where, as a man who earns a good salary, lives in a nice apartment, I can just walk to the nearest bar and go home with a girl that same night. If sex is that easy to get, why would I tie myself down to one woman for the rest of my life? And this is how I personally used to rationalize it when I was still in the world. I used to think about it. Actually, I didn't. The idea of marriage was abhorrent to me. Use the word abhor before. It was abhorrent to me because I used to think, why would any sane man with any modicum of common sense tie himself down to one sexual partner when they have the opportunity, when they have, there is the opportunity of having several different sexual experiences, because each woman is different. Several different sexual experiences, and I'm here tying myself to Maria, tying myself to Maria for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to a point even where she won't be sexually attractive anymore, and I'm still there with Maria, So I would say further, one of the most common causes on the side of men is a lack of fear of hell, a lack of desire for heaven, a lack of desire for a relationship with God, and therefore they fall back down to the next default level, which is to find as much pleasure in the world as they possibly can, which is pleasure in sex, pleasure in alcohol, pleasure in drugs, and pleasure in pursuing all manner of material things, of material wealth. You want to amass wealth, buy land, build a big house, have a big car, fly, take trips. That is the ceiling for human beings who are living without God. Now, the side of women, because you said for women, they are hoping that this sexual encounter may turn into something long term. There are women who have other motivations. She may just want your money, so she won't care if it's a casual thing. But on average, in a sexual relationship between a man and a woman, on average, the woman is hoping for something long-term and lasting. And like you said, because she knows that the man wants sex, she provides that. She says, look, let's make a deal. I'll give you sex and you'll stay with me. How about that? And the man is like, you know what, that's a good deal. That's a good deal for me. Let's do that, But that's a deal that is actually also causing single motherhood, because now the man quickly realizes, wait a minute, I can actually get better women than this one. Especially when men get a little bit of money. They start to attract more attractive women. So he will think, wait a minute, if I'm a bit patient, I can get a better package than the one I currently have. And so when they get to the point where they can afford to get someone better, they will. There's this statement that men are only as faithful. Okay, people in general tend to be as faithful as their options. You tend to be as faithful as the options available to you. If you have no options, you have to be faithful to the one you have. If you have several options, you're not going to be faithful. So there is a misuse of the body. On the side of men, it is to use women for their sexual pleasure, and on the side of women, it is to use sex to keep men, to keep the man's attention and to keep him in the relationship. But we are now seeing firsthand, further, single motherhood climbing to unprecedented levels, clearly, and unfortunately, it is the women and the children who are getting the raw end of the deal, because now the women are raising children by themselves, and children are growing up without fathers.
Yes, you have exposed the problem in
I am very experienced in immorality, Father, unfortunately for me.
Yes, you have given a very good picture of the problem. Yes.
So, Father, I want us to conclude on the issue of catechesis and example.
Yes.
Giving an example. And this is something that is very touchy. Maybe we could, I'm going to give you the question, then we'll take a break. I can refill my cup with some more water, and also give you some time to formulate your answer. Father, I went to, let me not use myself as an example. Maybe I should. Let me do it. It's okay. If I get hit for this, it's okay. I went to a very good school in high school. Very good school. Those who know me know which school it is. This school was obsessed with academic excellence. But it was obsessed with academic excellence to the detriment of the spiritual side. This is a Catholic school. It was established by Catholics. It is run by Catholics. Father, I entered this school, and by the time I left, and to this day, and I give this example in many of my talks, I only remember one instance where the headmaster quoted a verse from scripture in the probably 1,000 talks he gave us every morning at 8 at assembly. So this is a religious man, living a religious life of vows. This is a man of vows, who is headmaster of, people who don't know how old I am will not be able to guess which particular headmaster it is. People who know me very well know this, but I feel like it has hurt me for such a long time. It has caused me so much distress that I feel like if I don't talk about it, the prophet Jeremiah says, if I don't talk, my bones start to feel pain within themselves. If I don't talk about it, I feel like I will not get peace. I don't want to point accusing fingers, but I want to ask this question, Father. What is wrong within the clergy that they are not giving us the spiritual nourishment that we are craving? And when I say craving, I mean we are craving. We are famished, we are hungry, we are thirsty. There is so much nourishment in the Catholic faith that I've come to discover in the past 8 years that was not available. I don't want to say not available, but that I failed to access in the years leading up to 8 years ago. And the detriment that had in my life and my spiritual walk, I am lucky that I am sitting here with you and having this conversation. But Father, I left several people behind when I came back to the church. When I came back to the faith, I left several of my colleagues behind, and they are still living in that life of immorality. And we went to the same schools, we had the same friends, we had the same systems around us. But what the thing for me that hurts me the most, when I was telling you that parents can only do so much, at a certain point they release their children into the custody of other people. Why is the clergy not helping us, especially in these formative years when we are desperate to learn the faith, to love the faith, and to live a sacramental life? I think let's take a break there. Can we take a break?
If he has the answer, you can go.
No. I want to refill my cup, and I want to. Yes. Yeah.
Go and refill your
Yes.
cup.
Yeah. Thank you very much. about anything else that you want to let me know. Good. I'm ready. All right.
So you are asking about the priesthood specifically.
Not just the priesthood, but religious who are in charge of children.
It occurs to me to say that priests are a part of this world, and the crisis affects them as it affects other people. And it is true that sometimes you see priests, also religious, though there is a clear difference between a secular priest and a religious priest. But you see some of them who lack a seal for souls. And also sometimes they don't have the right ideas. They can mislead the faithful, those who go to them for advice. Yes, it is also true in our country, I believe, that priesthood is seen as a kind of acquiring a status in society which is prestigious. Also, you can make a bit of money.
So people enter the priesthood for the wrong reasons. They don't enter the priesthood for the salvation of souls and the glory of God.
I don't know, but let's say that someone who aspires to become a priest may have these other motivations, perhaps in the background, at the back of his mind, I would say. I have seen.
So is there a problem with priestly formation?
Yes, there is a bit of a problem. I have seen in some seminarians an attitude of giving the right, let's say, message to their formators, even if this message does not correspond to their real state. For example, you don't want to be seen not going for communion. Therefore, you go for communion, no matter what the state of your soul is. It happens. But I wouldn't say that there is a kind of crisis in the priesthood which is bigger than the crisis in society in general. No.
But yes, Father, I agree.
And it is true that priests, if they don't behave well, can cause a lot of scandal.
Yes. Father, personally, I think that we are all called to live lives of holiness. We are all called to live holy lives. But I feel like a priest has a greater influence over the lives of the people that God has placed under him than the average person. And I've read a bit of church history, and from what I know, for example, from the Albigensian heresy, which was one of the earliest heresies in the church, one of the earliest widespread heresies, that was it was quelled by Saint Dominic and the Rosary, the power of the Rosary, as well as the Protestant Revolution. the core issues were corruption in the clergy that flowed over into the laity. For example, I don't know who said it, but so there's a quote that when a priest goes to heaven, he takes with him 1,000 souls. But when he goes to hell, he takes with him 1,000 souls as well. So it seems to me that while society in general, it is true, is at its most corrupt, there is also a lukewarmness in the clergy, but even more than a lukewarmness, there is also actual immorality in the clergy that is causing them to lose that what you call the zeal. And that is causing Catholics to fall in several categories. The laity, some of them are becoming poorly catechized, because part of catechesis is also the zeal to teach. It's not just a matter of regurgitating words, but having the passion to impart knowledge on the person you're teaching. If you don't have the zeal for souls, whatever is coming out of your mouth may not register in the person that is listening to you. So you will have children who are poorly catechized because of priests or catechists that don't have the zeal for the faith. Then you have that resulting in people leaving the faith to look for truth elsewhere. Someone leaves home to go and find home. It doesn't make sense. Someone is leaving home to go and find home, because the home that they are in is not homely. The people there are not behaving as if this is home. If these people do not go out there to look for the truth, and these are the people who end up in the Pentecostal churches and the various Protestant denominations, they will lose the faith altogether and become agnostics and atheists, or they will remain Catholics but not practice the faith. Because if I know that my parish priest is secretly dating one of the parishioners, what stops me from living a life of sexual immorality if even my priest cannot keep himself sexually pure? And many of these scandals are well known in the parishes in which they occur. So that's why I'm saying that while the society in general is decaying, the decay within the clergy has a particularly unique impact on those of us that have been placed in these places to be nourished by them. This is why I came out of that school poorly formed.
Anyway, I think that you are right.
So I apologize that I know this is a very sensitive topic. It's very sensitive when we talk about the clergy. But there has to be a point for that which we talk about it, to prevent further decay. We have to protect ourselves as laity also at a certain point. I'm going to have children eventually, hopefully, God willing. If your prayers for me work, I know you've been praying very hard for me to find a spouse. If I have children eventually, I want to know that when I send them out into the world, they are going to be well taken care of, so that they don't go through the life that I went through.
Something that I tell priests, from time to time I have the chance to talk to priests. I have given a few retreats to priests, so yeah. Or sometimes I have personal conversations. And I tell them, don't fear to go for confession with a priest who knows you. If you are the curate, with a parish priest. If you are the parish priest, with a curate. Don't go for confession only when you see a priest who is passing by, who doesn't know you. You get hold of him, you make your confession, and you keep on giving this good image to your priests, friends, your friend priests, so to speak. I tell them this, perhaps because in Opus we are encouraged to be very open, be very sincere, and one of the ways in which we do so is going for confession, even with a priest who sits with you at table.
Wow. It's interesting. It always comes down, all these issues in society, they always come down to pride at the end of the day. It's the core issue, whether it's in the laity, because as a lay person, I can tell you, I also sometimes avoid certain priests. I will say, oh, that priest is my cousin. I can't go to confession to him because I don't want him to find out X, Y, and Z that I did. I would rather go to Father Anthony, who is not related to me, who sees me once a month, rather than this gentleman that I see almost every day.
You see, I am not telling you that you cannot choose spiritual director. That is very right. But imagine that this priest has had a problem. We all have problems. And he needs confession because he thinks that his soul is not in the right state to say Mass the following day. And instead of going with the priest who is living with him, he waits. And he may spend, months or several weeks celebrating Mass in a state which is not the right one. This is an idea that I try to hammer into the mind of my brother priests.
I think for those who are listening, we need to support Father Anthony in his retreats for priests. Please give us as much money as you can to keep these retreats happening, so that you can help your brethren priests. I mean, when we have good priests, usually the case is that the laity tends to follow. 8th is going to be my birthday, but it's also going to be the feast of St. John Vianney, according to the old calendar, who is my patron saint. And we all know his story. He was not the best theologian, but by his example, he managed. It is said that the entire parish of ours was saved, and everyone in that parish went to heaven because of the work of St. John Vianney. That's what I have heard. And I hope it's true. I hope it's true. So we have finished. We have concluded. Is there anything, Father, any issue in particular that we have not touched upon that you hope to just shed a little more light on?
Perhaps we could have spoken a little bit about contraception, because I believe that contraception is one of the evils that affect our society, because they affect the core, the heart of it, which is the marriage, not just the family, but the marriage, the couple. I don't think that a man and a woman who are using contraceptives can love each other, for the simple reason that God is not present in that community of two.
Father, that's a very strong statement to make, that you don't think that it is possible for a man and a woman who use contraception to love each other.
They may not be aware of it. Also, it's difficult to define what love is.
Yes.
But I believe that we cannot love someone in the right way if God is not present in that relationship. That is, if by loving or pretending to love this person, we are offending God, excluding God from that relationship.
Yes.
Yes. And you see,
is this a big problem, Father, the contraception problem? Is it something that you think is very big in marriage?
Yes, it happens. You see, you cannot blame women only. We live in a society, even here in Uganda, and in this we have lost the traditional values. And for an African, children, the more the better. Even sometimes the reason for polygamy, I understand, was not so much enjoying being with other women, but having more children. But this is changing. In medical school, students are heavily formed in a contraceptive mentality. And I have seen, I have heard, I haven't seen it, doctors scolding a woman for having 5 children, for example.
A Catholic doctor.
I don't know whether he's Catholic or not, but it doesn't really matter because contraception is not a Catholic issue. I mean, we are at the level of natural law, which affects all of us. I mean, using contraceptives is a sin for a Catholic and for a Muslim and for a Protestant, for a Hindu, for anyone.
Really? How does it contradict the natural? I would have thought it's a
You see, my reasons are very simple. You are not the one who has designed your body, and in particular your reproductive organs. That is clear. Who is the designer? God. And in the organs themselves, in their functions, you see their purpose. That is, you see the will of the creator, the designer. If you change the purpose of these organs, you are offending the creator. The designer is, imagine that I give you nowadays they don't use for fountain pens anymore. We don't use them. But imagine that I give you a beautiful fountain pen that used to be the gift in the old days, a birthday gift or something like that, and you say, "Ah, wonderful! I'm going to use it to dig in the garden," for example. So I would not be pleased. So this is what a couple who uses contraceptives does to the creator. Perhaps they are not aware.
What if the person, because Father, for Catholics I understand that it is a sin, it is a mortal sin, because the Catholic view of sex is that it is unity between one man and one woman for in the context of marriage, and also it has to be procreated.
But this is not just a Catholic view.
So if a
it's the
Protestant,
human view.
if the Protestant is listening to you right now,
Yeah.
and it is possible that there could be a couple of Protestants who are going to listen to this or to watch this, and they are thinking, I've already had 3 children. Let's say I've already had 4. School fees is going up every year. We are in a 2-income household, but the income is barely looking after the other 4 children. We want to give these children the best possible life, the best possible education. We want to have a comfortable home. Introducing other mouths to feed in this setup, given its already precarious position, is not prudent and may actually also be sinful, because you're not being careful and you're not being prudent. So if someone said that, what would you tell him if the person was a Protestant?
If he's a Protestant, I would tell him, first of all, what I told you, that sexuality is not our creation. It comes from God and with a purpose, and we have to respect this purpose. And second, I would tell him that he should reflect a little bit on what the best thing to give their children is. Because if he understands by the best thing to send them to Canada to study, I would tell him, you are wrong. They can study here in the country. They don't have to have a degree from, I don't know, Harvard University or MIT. then I would tell them that they have to carry a cross. He's a Protestant, he reads the gospel, and for sure he knows that Jesus says that if you want to follow me, you have to carry your cross. And the cross is also present in married life. And also, I would tell him that when there is a reason, one can space out the coming of children or even stop having them using natural family planning, which demands a bit of effort, but it's possible. Because some people believe that there is an absolute right of having sex,
Yes.
to have sex. And this is not the case.
Father, the Protestant, allow me to play devil's advocate. The Protestant is going to say that of all that, how successful is natural family planning? Because we have examples of people who practice natural family planning and they have 7, 8, 9 children. So clearly it's not working for them. Why would it work for me?
But wait, this is a kind of reason which is not well founded. I know a couple who teach natural family planning, mostly the wife. She has been doing this for some years. And they tell you that it works. But you have to learn. You have to learn. I mean, if you buy a new car or a new washing machine, you just
Yes.
you don't just press a button, guessing that that will be the.
But Father, speaking
the right
realistically, after having my 4th child, let's say we are 30, maybe I'm 43. My wife is 39. We've had our 4th child. Okay, let's say we've had our 5th. We've had our 5th child. Now I'm speaking as a Catholic. We've had our 5th child and we're like, this is enough mouths to feed and to take to school. No, Father, let me first because I am very sure that many Catholics watching this who are married have this problem. Are you telling me that from the day we say we are going to practice natural family planning, when my wife is 39, I'm 43, to when my wife reaches menopause at 47, there is not going to be a single conception of a child in there?
I mean, I don't know. Of course, it can be a conception, but let me tell you, if it happens, you will not say, the method has failed. You will say, we thought, me and my wife, that God didn't want us to have another child, but we were mistaken. You see, we have to trust in God. We have to abandon ourselves in His hands. Jesus is telling us.
But if you say something like that in public, people will laugh at you because they'll think you're not using your common sense. They'll think, obviously, you've conceived a child because natural family planning is not as effective as artificial family planning. So yes, God wanted you to have a child. That is true. I mean, there are people who conceive children even while using artificial family planning. So yes, God, but the reason you have been more likely to conceive a child than a person who is using diaphragm or pills or whatever.
Nobody uses it.
Or the patch, you know what it's called?
Implants.
Yeah. The reason why those people from the age of 39, the wife was 39 up to 47, they have not conceived a single child, is because that method is effective. The reason why in between 39 and 47 you guys have conceived 2 children using natural family planning is for the simple reason that it is not a good method of contraception.
That is, I would say that is a kind of gratuitous statement. Natural family planning is effective when it is used properly.
Okay.
It demands a bit of sacrifice.
Okay.
And the church has always encouraged but not the church, but God, to be generous in having children, because children are meant to live forever.
Yes, that's
Forever. I mean, I always think of the questions, a positive question that God may ask this lady who has just died. How many children do you have? Or have you had? 4. Let me look at my papers. I wanted to give you 5. Where is the missing one?
Yeah, and also
Sorry to interrupt you. By the way, you might have mentioned Saint John Vianney, the Curé of Ars. I read in his biography that once a lady who had 12 children, had 11 children, was expecting the 12th, complained to him about having so many children. And he told her, you don't know the number of women who are in hell for not having had the children that God wanted to send them. I mean, having children is something very serious.
yes,
Very serious.
yes, because there is nothing better than having life, than being alive and having the possibility of seeing God.
Exactly.
There is nothing better than that.
Though, together with Paul VI, the Humanae Vitae, I don't object to the use of the natural method when there is a reason.
Is it ever imprudent to have several children?
Not really, because God always comes to your help. The problem is when the family is not the right one. I remember someone, he has 6 children now, but at the time he had only 3. And he mentioned that he doesn't know any family who cannot feed their children, no matter how many they are, cannot take them to school, in which the husband and the wife are together. Husband and wife are together.
Yes.
The problem comes when you have a single mother, or you have this man who has children all over the place, and he cannot pay school fees for all of them. In one occasion here, in the visitors room, I still remember this young fellow went to see his father. He was doing his master's and he needed some money. He was about to finish. And his father was a soldier. He was not living with his mother. And he put a bit of pressure on the father. You are my father. But the father told him, what do you think? That you are my only child. I have so many that I don't know. So, of course, when we are responsible, we pay for this lack of responsibility here in this world.
So, Father, if the man is unemployed and the woman is a stay-at-home mom, wouldn't it be imprudent for them to conceive a child?
Yes, probably this is the case.
Yes.
And also, if I don't know that the wife has a mental problem, or the husband, or if there can be a number of reasons, and it's difficult to somehow give a list. Each couple has to pray over it and to, in the presence of God, make a decision. And sometimes the decision is let us stop or let us wait.
Yeah. I will just conclude with this on that issue, because I know that people will take whatever lesson they want from this. But Saint Catherine of Siena was the 23rd of 24 children from the same woman.
Yes.
So if if you think that it is wrong to have that many children, then ask yourself why God would wait until the 23rd child of a family to give them a saint. It's because he loved the fact that they had a big family. God loves big families. Yeah.
That is true. And I am convinced that many priestly vocations and vocations, also exemplary husbands and wives, come from big families.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, Father, thank you so much. We have run out of time. We ran out of time a long time ago, but you've been very patient. Thank you for having this talk with me. Whoever is watching this, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment if you can. Father, could you please give us a final blessing before we depart?
Just a simple blessing, very simple.
Yes.
Mighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit bless you and remain in your heart forever.
Amen.